Hi everyone, I'm Xander and welcome to my channel. Um, I'm a poet and a songsmith, and my videos are about my creative process. As part of the video, I will perform a particular piece that I wrote, either a song or a poem, and afterwards I will break it down into things like the whys, the wherefores, uh, its purpose, craft aspects about the particular piece. But before I do any of that, I would like to pay my respects to the Wadawurrung people on whose lands I'm broadcasting today. Their elders, past, present, and emerging, into any other elder here that might be watching now or later that might be present. I'd like to also acknowledge that this is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded. This is stolen land. And I'd like to pay my respects to the resilience and strengths of the survivors of the colonization process. So, this particular video is the first poem that I'm doing on this channel. It is a poem called My Dark Lover. I normally do the poem in tandem with the song that I've just done in a previous vid called In Your Eyes. So if you want to see that particular vid and check out that particular song, you'll get the other half of the two and how they fit together. But to start with, I want to talk about My Dark Lover specifically, and after the performance of the poem, we can go into why I do it in tandem and what I get from this chunk of it in comparison to the song. So My Dark Lover, I wrote in May 2019. It is, like a lot of my poems, something I just picked up my pen and wrote, thinking very deeply about my spiritual side in this particular instance, and how important to me a particular part of my spiritual side was, a particular entity that it's been with me for a while, and who, basically is like a guide, I guess, in a lot of aspects of what I do, and whose presence, because they're there and they're not there, they're not always around, they pop in and they pop out. I feel deeply. And I was also thinking about, when I was starting to write this poem, about correlations between this particular entity and their presence, and how it felt in relation to a particular theme that came through a book by an author called Mercedes Lackey. Mercedes Lackey wrote one of my favorite books, definitely one of my top 5. I call it my blankie book. It's the book I read anytime that I need that kind of a hug of something. It's a very grounding book. It brings me back to me in many aspects, and it's a book called Magic's Pawn, and it's part of a trilogy: Magic's Pawn, Magic's Promise, Magic's Price. And in Mercedes Lackey's books, she talks about death as being this mysterious dark lover that we write love songs to, and that we have these particular sonnets, and some people's paths is more intertwined with death as this dark lover than others. They're always being seduced by dark lover death, and engaging with death in some particular way, shape, or form. And death is an interesting word and an interesting concept, One of my first teachers of the path of the craft, Xander Stoneacorn, who taught me tarot card reading, taught me a lot about the death card and about how it was a card of transformation. It was more or just as much about beginnings as it was about endings, and that when we think about death, it's not something that is final, done, that's it, it's all over. It's also the beginning of something, but it is the end of something that has gone, that we say goodbye to. And it means that when we continue on, we are transformed. We're not the same as we were before. So this talk about death and this interaction with death is as much about transformation and interacting with the need to change and to accept change and to move with change. And this whole tug that comes with this moving through change, this letting go of this stuff, this tearing off of this veneer that no longer serves, and letting it go and emerging as something else. And the confusion of that emerging process when you're going through, when something like this is happening and you come out the other side and you're disoriented. You may not understand that the transformation has happened because you're still semi in the mindset of where you were before. So the poem goes something like this. He beckons to me, my dark lover, in secret whispers and hidden signs. Come to me, my broken beauty, dance with me on shattered lives. And his voice is deep and full of longing, like sunset light through darkened trees. Pale fingers reaching, pale shards of bone that tear my skin like tattered leaves. And I lie here wrapped in his silken blackness. Parted lips wait to breathe their last. Till teasing smiles crack me open. Silver tears break my fast, and I sigh. One long breath out. A holy prayer to he who waits for me to grasp his outreached hand and dance the dance of weird and fate. Death beckons to me, my dark lover, in secret whispers and hidden signs. Come to me, my broken beauty. Dance with me on shattered lives. Okay, that last part of it, death beckons to me, that I added on in March 2020, when I started doing it in tandem with the song In Your Eyes. In Your Eyes is a very upbeat, artificially lifting up high song, and it ends with a crash where I fall. And pairing it with this particular poem, where I'm pairing it with something that is about death, about transformation, about dying and being reborn, about tearing off this veneer, about the seductiveness of this transformation. It helps to balance it out because it gives me a way of navigating the fall, and becomes a pathway to something that I can emerge. I mean, the soil holds a lot of things that enable us to grow. The seeds are in the soil, and from the seeds, flowers grow. And so when we fall and we get immersed and smashed down, we can emerge as something else. So my dark lover, I never really thought of as a death poem initially, Initially, when I was starting to write it, it was about my relationship between me and this particular spirit, the spirit and I. However, as I was writing it, as I was choosing the words, I understood that I was also writing essentially to death. But I didn't want to mention it in the poem because I wanted it to be underlying. I wanted it to be something that people looking at it might see or might not, but it was there. But just like death is always there, but rarely spoken, there's this undercurrent of something, rather than something that is big and in your face necessarily. But when I was putting it in tandem with In Your Eyes, it suddenly occurred to me that I needed to mention the word death. And so I did what I often do if I find that I need, sometimes repetition is something that comes through really strongly, that it's needed. And I quite often will start with the phrase or this, what I started with, I will end with. It will be like a cycle thing. So that was important to put on there. It's a relatively short poem. A lot of my stuff is a lot longer than that. But essentially, I don't think there's anything more to say about My Dark Lover. It's one of my favorite poems. It's something I say a lot. I did say it slightly wrongly when I did it just before. There's one word that I missed and I said something else instead. But that also I find happens a lot with my stuff. When I am performing, when I am doing, you get blanks and things will just come out. And that's just part of the performance of it. And it will just come out as it comes out. And I take notice of what I might end up repeating. I take notice of what word I might replace something with. And when that happens, I sit there and I reflect back on the poem that I wrote. And I think, was this word needing to be repeated? Is this something that is showing me that something else in the poem that I might need to, or might be interesting to work through? Or is this something else? So I always do sit back and reflect. And if I repeat a word, think, okay, I repeated that word there. Why is that word important to me in this moment? Because it's not necessarily about the poem. Sometimes if I'm saying something like the poem or a song or something, and I'm repeating something or getting something slightly wrong, and another word comes through, part of me always thinks, okay, well, what is that telling me? Why did that feel the need to repeat there? I have a tendency to not believe in coincidences quite often. I think if something happens, it happens for a reason. I don't always understand the reason. I don't always agree with the reason. But generally, there is something underlying it that is interesting, at least for me to think about. So when I make a mistake, word-wise, generally that's what happens. And if I'm doing it and people aren't following with the words, most people wouldn't even notice because they don't know the words. So most of the time I don't point it out, but I thought I would there because I find it interesting. So that was the poem My Dark Lover, and I hope you found this vid interesting, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.